Are you a leader who's ready to go from stuck to unstoppable? It's time to stop leading on autopilot and start leading with purpose. Through my Leadership with Purpose program and next level coaching, you'll gain the clarity and confidence and tools to lead from within so you can make a greater impact without burning out. Build stronger teams, crush self doubt, lead with clarity and conviction, and unlock your next level of leadership. Don't settle for good leadership. Step into your greatness. Visit warrenwandling.com to learn more and start your journey today. Your next level of leadership starts now. Welcome back to another episode of How to Become an Obstacle Buster. I'm your host, Warren Wandling, the show that's dedicated helping leaders and entrepreneurs to overcome their obstacles, build resilience, and achieve success. And today I'm joined with Pratiqk Jaani, the author of Dhrasti, who's the perception of creator of the Dhrasti Method. After spending 20 years of accounting and tax advising, working with entrepreneurs and professionals, he began to notice something deeper beneath the surface in financial pressure, anxiety, and relationship struggles. He discovered that suffering is not often driven by circumstance, but conditioning that shapes how we perceive our circumstance. Today, we're going to talk about how shifting that perspective can help us move from stress, scarcity, into calm, clarity, and stability. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Warren.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I think it's fascinating in the discovery that you have been able to share the world. So before we actually dive into more of your work, share with our listeners kind of more of your background from the accounting world back into the deeper work that you got started in that you're doing today.
Yes, so I came to UK in 2003. I was born and grew up in India, finished the school, went into accounting degree and started working for different practices. And as an accountant, I had the opportunity to learn about businesses, what it takes to run business, what makes business successful and what makes businesses failure. What are the struggles of the entrepreneur or the owner and founders? I've worked with a lot of startups. And what I was learning is not just the numbers, but also the mindset of these people who were running and starting their businesses. And what I learned is the mindset was playing the key role in their work. So every time I have a meeting with my clients, we were less talking about the numbers, but we were more discussing on the mindset. So mindset of their staff, how to manage their team, how to manage expectations of them, and the challenges they had when they started recruiting because they had no experience of managing people. Before either they were working for someone or finished their degree and just came to the business world. So I've been working on it, and understand, and myself been a startup of my own accounting business and the startup consulting, all and the tax planning. So I had my own challenges as well. And when I compare my challenges with them, then I see what actions they're taking to overcoming those challenges. And from the moment I decided I wanted to have my own business, it took me 8 years to actually execute that plan. And it was nothing externally. I think it was a battle within myself about insecurity when I leave the job, whether I'll be earning enough from my business to pay my bills and take care of my family. And the hours I was putting in at work, and I used to get no holidays during the tax returns time because we are always busy. So when I started working with the clients, I learned what they were facing. So I was helping them more into the mindset, and they felt motivated because I've been very positive. I always say to them, like, if you have a problem, you can keep thinking about it and do not move forward. Instead, focus on solution. So they come to me every time they have any problem, not just accounting or finance related, but any sort of problem. And we brainstorm and I give them ideas. And in 2017, I was diagnosed with tuberculosis, and that really changed my life because at that moment, I actually visualized myself that if I didn't survive this illness, what would have happened to the world? What would have happened to the people for whom I'm not living my life the way I want? And that shifted everything. I'm like, okay, after 6 months, I passed away. Everything's going to be normal. So why do I need to die in order to live the life the way I want? So that started shifting things in me. I was more positive into not taking risks, but overcoming the fears and take the calculated risks. So I started my own business. I had relationship problems and I came out of it and, started living the life the way I wanted to live.
Mhm.
And then using the same thought process or logics, I started helping my clients in their businesses and their work, and they started to work as well. And I always was told that, okay, your personality depends on the people who you are surrounded by since your
Mhm.
childhood. But I didn't kind of understand how that really worked until 4 years ago. I came across Rapid Transformational Therapy by Marisa Peer. So I did that course and I learned
Mhm.
that's from the childhood how we see events that take place around us, and it's kind of a programming in our mind. So
Mhm.
if we see our parent, one of the parent is shouting for something, we learn
Mhm.
that if you want something, you have to shout. If you
Mhm.
if you see what is happening, if the mom is upset because of something, you learn to copy that behavior. And that's why most kids are copying their parents. It's not deliberate, but that's how our brain learns. And over
Mhm.
time, when you see these things happen repeatedly, it becomes stronger and stronger pattern. That's your neurological pattern. It forms your
Mhm.
beliefs. Over time, we create our identity. So, this is what the life is about. This is how you be as a person. This is what we are meant to do, like earn money, have respect in family, look after the family, go on holidays. That gives you enjoyment. When, if you make a
Mhm.
financial loss, it's a bad news and you feel bad about it. You got to stress about it.
Mhm.
Security is very important. All these things which we are experiencing, they were all taught to us, not directly. It was just how our brain learned to capture as we were growing up. And because everyone around us was also they also learned this from their childhood. It's like a
Mhm.
cycle. It's been coming since the human evolution. When I discovered this, what I was doing is helping people removing their beliefs which were negative and not helping them, to change it and reprogram to the positive beliefs. So somebody who lacks confidence, we would see how
Mhm.
they learn to not have confidence from their childhood. And we transform that with the new script, which they have to listen to the recording for 30 days. But one
Mhm.
day I was doing this to myself and I realized that what was my negative emotions or experience were learned, and I'm now learning the positive experience, but they're both
Mhm.
learned. So what is that is behind that learn, which is the layer on which this learning is kind of being installed. And that blew my head. That moment
Mhm.
was ground shaking because I didn't exist there who I thought I was. Because if Pratik is an accountant, he learned to be an accountant. If Pratik is
Mhm.
happy, he's been taught what events should make one happy. It was like a programming. And the part in me which I saw didn't need anything externally. We've been learning that there is something we need to get from outside to make us feel fulfilled, whether it's money,
Mhm.
whether it's success, whether it's people, relationships. But this part was complete on its own. It didn't want anything. So if I started living life from that, how it changed. So when I was doing something, I was actually
Mhm.
getting more joy by participating in that particular activity, not because I
Mhm.
wanted an outcome which will then fulfill me, because I am complete by myself. So that removed all the resistances. I managed to remove all the labels of the events. So anything happens, it's an experience rather than calling it happiness or sadness or pain or success, because they are all different experiences. So I started
Mhm.
labeling them, and then I showed this strategy to some of other contacts of mine, and it changed the way they used to see life. And that's how the book was born, called Dhrasti, the Perception. So instead of seeing the life from the learned lens, we see from the true lens, which is ourself, the real me. And the Dhrasti method got evolved after the book, because I had a group of beta readers who said the book
Mhm.
is, something shifted something in them. Why don't you do something extra where people can actually feel what you've written? So that's how they both came.
Well, that's fascinating. So certainly within the background that you just shared, the deeper understanding that you've discovered some patterns. I'm sure
Mhm,
you started to share some of this insight already, but you probably noticed patterns um, with other leaders that you interacted with
mhm,
around financial pressure, anxiety, or relationship struggles. Can you give some insight to our listeners, some of the patterns that you've discovered?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about the relationship, right? Because
Okay.
I figured out I was in a marriage for about 15 years, and
Hmm.
it didn't take me 15 years to realize that this isn't working. It was much earlier. But because of my social conditioning or family conditioning, I perceived that marriage is a bad thing because, we promise each other to be together for 7 lifetimes or 100 lifetimes, right? And it should there are struggles, there are challenges in marriages, and we have to just overcome. There is a social pressure because if you were, I mean, nowadays it's different, but I got married like 20 years ago. It was very
Hmm.
different. So my mindset was like, getting married is not good, it's not perceived positively in a society where I come from, and as a
Hmm.
result I had to just be in it. And over time, when I had this realization, what I realized is that what we are taught was for a reason, to keep the
Hmm.
society in certain shape. However, it doesn't have to be true, because if two people are not happy, it's very simple for Western communities, right? Because if
Hmm.
you don't, if you're not happy, you can literally just move on. But it was very different where I come from.
Hmm.
So it wasn't actually the society, is how I perceived. Nobody actually sat down and told me that you shouldn't do this, but this is how I
Hmm.
perceived. That's how my brain learned while it was growing up, by listening at how one's divorce was interpreted amongst the people, which I was
Hmm.
listening when I was playing around, when these conversations were happening. So that started
Hmm.
shaping those reasons. And same thing with work. As I said earlier, like when I had to leave my job, I helped 3 people who wanted to leave their corporate job and start their own business. It took
Hmm.
them 5 to 10 years to do that. And when I sat down and I asked them, what is that you have a fear about? Because you know what you want to do, you're good at it. What is that? He
Hmm.
said, 10 years ago, I had nothing to lose, but now I have acquired
Hmm.
something. And what if I lose it all? And then I asked him, is it the fear that you might lose it all? Because I'm sure you can earn it again. And now it will be quicker, because 10 years ago, you didn't know how to make money. Now you know how to make money. Or is it about how people will perceive you? Like you had everything, an amazing job, and how, what on earth made you think that you should do a business and lose it all? And then he goes, actually, you know what? It's people. So here you
Hmm.
go. So that really shifted something in them.
Hmm.
Anyways, it's now 8 months in the business, and he's doing fantastic. And he thanks me every time he speaks to me. Like if I didn't make him realize that, he would still be working 9 to 5 and be unhappy. Talking about business itself, I had a
Hmm.
client who, they started some online therapy platform a few years ago, and they were doing B2C, and they suddenly, the COVID happened, and they
Hmm.
had invested significant amount of money into developing that, and they were getting no further investment and nothing that sort. And we were just sitting down, and I said, what is that you're really worried about? And he goes,
Hmm.
I don't know when the redevelopment will start. And I said,
Hmm.
why are you? Because you are worried. The law of attraction actually comes in this play. When you're worried, you're
Hmm.
stressing. When you're stressing, your body gets tight, right?
Hmm.
And your breath becomes short. And that's the moment you're actually not aligned with anything positive that can happen. So if you're stressed about something, what you're really going to manifest is more stress. And
Hmm.
I said, just relax yourself. Just see what is actually bothering you. Because let's say you went 9 months on holiday or 1 year holiday. Are you able to pay your
Hmm.
own bills? And he goes, yes. What is that really? And he goes, I've promised people that this product will be launched by so and so time. But now there is COVID. But even though people will be fine, but he perceived how people will perceive him, that he didn't
Hmm.
deliver what he wanted. And I was with him for about 6 hours, and he left. And 3 days later, he calls and he goes, Pratik, I've got a new idea. We're going to do B2B. So instead of finding individual person looking for therapy, we're going to
Hmm.
reach out to corporates, because in COVID, everyone's working from home. And
Hmm.
if I go to companies and say this is more beneficial for your employees, so they would get a subscription, within 1 year, they were turning around over $1 million a quarter. So
Wow.
everything just changed, because all he had to do is forget or just understand where the conditioning was holding him back. And when he let go of that, things started to shift.
Yeah, that's interesting that you identify the patterns that you just
Yes.
shared, but
Yes.
also then really the perspective of the conditioning
Yes.
and
Yes.
released it from permission that you didn't have to follow that conditioning of what could
Yes.
be possible. Is that
Yes.
what
Yes.
you're saying?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it was more about them, each of them. The common thing was
Mhm,
they didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to change anything. They just had to see how they learn to react this way. It's like you see a magic and you get fascinated.
mhm,
And an hour later the magician actually shows you how he does that trick. And if
uh-huh,
you see that trick again, it's not going to give you same thrill again, because you know how this has been done, right? So you get angry because something happened. And when you see how you learn to get angry at this particular event, that anger just goes away because you understood. Like, I've hypnotized 3 people on controlling their anger, and
mhm,
their life experiences in their childhood quite similar, because they saw the parents arguing, and the parents who were shouting and angry was winning the argument. So they learned that if you want to win your way, you got to get angry. And
hmm,
how many times they would have seen in, like, growing up, 10 years of growing up, living with the same
mhm,
parents? Enormous times. So they learned to get angry to get things their way. So when they experienced how they learned to get angry, how their system had a coping mechanism of, to get their emotion out with anger, they
mhm.
couldn't get angry anymore. And they literally called me like 3 weeks later and goes, Pratik, everything was happening before the session is still the same, but the way I used to
Mhm.
react to those has completely changed. I'm super calm. And they didn't have to do any exercise for that. It is just understanding and realizing how this pattern was created.
So that pattern also could be the same applied if it was stress or anxiety. So if
Absolutely.
you connect
Absolutely.
the conditioning to that circumstance, and then you suggest for them to take a different perspective on
Ab-
what they're seeing,
Absolutely.
how they were formed.
Absolutely. When I had my first office job, because while I was studying, I worked in a restaurant, and I think that was one of
Uh-huh.
the best time I had, because you had no pressure. You walk in, you do your task, like making cocktails and whatever, and then you go home and you have to forget about it. There is nothing to
Yeah,
carry forward the next day. Whereas in the office is different, because there is always
yeah.
something to do. So you start at 9:30, you finish 5:30, right? And I give this example about stress, that if I remembered something on Saturday, that I had to finish something on Friday, but I didn't finish it because I was busy with
Mhm,
something else. From that moment, I lose what I was feeling and on the weekend until I go to the office on Monday and finish it. Now, I knew that there was nothing I could do between that whole Sunday afternoon and Saturday afternoon and the whole Sunday. Over time,
mhm.
I started to, like, from 12 o'clock on Sunday, I'm almost depressed and stressed because I don't know how my Monday is going to be. So the Monday is tomorrow. And how did I learn that? Because I had some colleagues who always came on Monday with stress. So I learned from them, because I was quite positive before, but it's not that everything we learn from childhood. When we start saying something on a repeated basis, we start learning new things. That's why habits can be changed. Your patterns can change if either you learn from repetition or someone with authority. Like if somebody comes and says, "Oh, no, you shouldn't eat this, it creates cancer," you won't pay much attention to it. But if the cancer specialist comes and that person tells you something, you know that that person has a credibility of giving that statement. Your subconscious takes it straight away. And if you still keep eating that thing, obviously you're going to manifest cancer because you strongly believe that. So with stress, I think the Monday was, I spent good 3, 4 years being, spending my Sundays with stress. And once I didn't go away. I mean, I started my work, and then only it became normal to me, because now it was my own
Mhm.
business and I knew how to manage my clients. But I spent good 4 or 5 years. My Sundays were the worst day of my week. And Monday I go to the office, and by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, I'm like, everything was normal. Why was I stressing? But I learned from others. What
Mm.
is really the stress? It's the unknown, right? And if the unknown is something we have to think of ourselves, that unknown can also be positive, right? So what
Mhm.
triggers that? If you have a choice to think positive and think negative, what triggers for you to choose the negative one? And that's what we see around us. That's how we learned. And if 100 people are doing something and you feel, if you don't feel the same way, you're going to be not belonging in the same community, because this is all coming from our evolutionary process. We were in
Mm-hmm.
groups and there was an alpha male who would look after us. So we must follow the rules about, of this group to feel safe, because they provide us safety and security. And there is always something to, to deliver as obligation to remain in that group. So now those groups are gone, but our subconscious is still holding those scarcity mindset, which makes us decide that because we operate from scarcity, there is something external there to make us feel fulfilled, whether it's bonus, whether it's money, wealth, whether it's people.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, I started from £500 a month salary to
Mm-hmm.
500 plus per hour earnings in the last 20 years. But my internal state has always been the same. Like there needs to be more, there needs to be more. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, when does it really end? If I look at these companies who are the richest companies in the world, they also want to drive more money. And where does it end? Like the life would end, but these desires would not end. And what is creating that? So I had these questions, this curiosity from my childhood. And I think one of the reasons I had this realization is because of that curiosity and observing how people are thinking and how they are reacting. Once I had the realization, there was nothing more to achieve in terms of
Mm-hmm.
to fulfill myself. So, I give this example very often. Like somebody is working in corporate full time and they want to play piano. So half an hour Sunday, they're playing piano. Now, playing that
Mm-hmm.
piano gives them so much joy and they feel relaxed because playing piano itself is a fulfilling activity. Now, if you feel fulfilled from inside, everything you do from the point you wake up to the moment you go to bed, it is like
Mm-hmm.
playing that piano, because you are doing what you're doing because you are getting joy out of it, not because you want a promotion, not because you want more money. And I'm not saying money is not going to come. It will come,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not incomplete without it. And once you operate, and that kind of ticks the box of let go when we look at the law of attraction, that you write your affirmations, you do the visualizations, and you feel the emotions of you already possess that, what you want, and you let go.
Mm-hmm.
That let go is actually letting go of the emotional attachment from that outcome. And that would only come when you feel fulfilled from within. And that's where I struggled. And most of the people I spoke to about law of attraction struggled, because what is let go? How do you let go? Like if I want 10 million pounds in my bank account and I'm visualizing it, and there is an inner voice says, no, you don't have it, right? How do you let go? Because you're desperate. But with this understanding, this is not a technique, it's a realization which everyone has in them. It is just a matter of discovering it. That fulfillment is automatic. So now, if there is a situation outside, and if I would normally worry about it, instead that trigger just takes me to that observer part or the Dhrasti part, and I see, oh, this is emotion. I just feel those emotions and then come out of it within like 1 minute. That's what I really want people to experience. It doesn't ask you to become yogi and go to Himalayas. What we are saying, you live your life the way you are doing, but the learned expectations, if you don't get it, upsets you, gives you stress, gives you insecurity, you will be free from those negative emotions once you understand how those emotions were installed in the first place.
Yeah, fascinating. So then what's the connection between scarcity and identity? Because you're mentioning like that's the our identity of how we
Yes.
work
So,
or how we see ourselves.
yes,
How
yes.
is that? Where's that connection to that successful leader, those two?
So scarcity is something we learned as part of our evolution. So we were monkeys and then we developed a cognitive ability and we became human over time. And the first requirement of us was being safe and survive. So food
Mhm.
was the scarcity, because we had to rely externally for food. And over time things got evolved, and the food, then it became luxury, then you got house and everything, then you got a society, you've got identity, you got respect. Now respect is measured by your wealth. This is all evolved as part of conditioning. The body needs food and body needs to sleep. Anything else, it's conditioning. So because we grew up, or we were evolved from the lenses that we need to have something from external to survive. not to
Mm-hmm.
complete. And that's where the misunderstanding is. We need things externally to survive, but we are still fulfilled. So we need to eat food to survive in this body, but that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
complete us. It's like fuel. The car is car regardless of it's got fuel in it or not. Fuel is just
Mm-hmm.
to make it run. So we didn't know. So if we didn't have fuel, we just ran for fuel, and without fuel the car was so incomplete. So the scarcity mindset came from that. And because we didn't know how it came from, we've been teaching our children, or our parents taught us, that you need to have more money, you need to have assets, you need to be financially secured. But then there was no limit to it. There is no number like if you have X amount a month, you are secure.
Mm-hmm.
No, it just has to be more and more and more until the life finishes, right? So that thing came from the scarcity. But if we operate the exact same thing from abundance, now if I say it, it's just a sentence and a philosophy. But when you see how we learned to feel that scarcity, it's like learning that magic again. That scarcity will go away because this is a part you actually feel and experience, which feels the wholeness, which feels the completeness, and it wants nothing. If you ask that part, do you want 10 million pounds? And the part will say no. It doesn't want anything. Are you complete?
Mm-hmm.
And you will get the answer, yes, I'm complete. What are you here for? And the answer I get is experience.
Mm-hmm.
Experience the activities. That's what I get the answer. And the people have given this technique or experimented these techniques on, they felt the exact same thing. And it's like we all buy iPhone, and when we buy a new iPhone, it's identical,
Mm-hmm.
except the colors we choose. And we start using it. So we put our wallpaper, we download the apps we want, and in 6 months' time, those iPhones are no longer identical, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you can hold the phone and you can tell this is not your phone. What changed it? How we condition that phone,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
that's what is happening with us. When we were born, every single person was born with the same hardware, so to speak. And then we
Yeah.
were installed different programs according to the user, in our case, according to our exposure. And that
Mm-hmm.
created our identity. So if I grew up in a surrounding where, like, I was born in a community where we were all vegetarian, I'm still vegetarian. So my identity is I'm vegetarian. I
Mm-hmm.
only do good things. I don't hurt people. I don't take
Mm-hmm.
things off people. I don't steal. These are the things I learned. What is important in life for you to be happy. And these things can change. These things can change depending on your surrounding. And that is the beautiful thing. They call it neuroplasticity. So if you had a belief
Mm-hmm.
from your childhood, if you learn and understand, you can reprogram it. And that even at any age, there is no age restriction. You could be 100 years old and you can change your belief by just
Mm-hmm.
understanding it, how it came. So identity is how people around us made us believe what the life is. We learn from people's experiences
Mm-hmm.
or how we perceive events that are taking place externally, and we form an identity. So if we see something being criticized, we would tell ourselves subconsciously, we're not going to become like that. Right. So if
Mm-hmm.
if one student didn't do homework and he got punished, what we learned, we do homework from the next day, right? Because we don't
Mm-hmm.
want to get punished. So over time, there are hundreds and thousands of different characteristics of a good person, which our system chooses to call good, creates
Mm-hmm.
our identity. So Pratik, who's Pratik? Pratik is someone who will not get angry. He's always calm. He always has solution. He has so much knowledge. He reads so many books. This is an identity. But how did I
Mm-hmm.
do it? Because I learned from others. I learned that, okay, if you read books, you get so much knowledge. So I started doing that. And it was true. I was
Mm-hmm.
getting so much knowledge. That that is my identity. So people know me, can tell what Pratik is capable of and what Pratik is not capable of. That is the identity.
So critique within the difference between affirmation
Mm-hmm.
and the neuroplasticity with the neural pathways that you create with the dominant thoughts that you're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the connection with your method
Mm-hmm.
with the other research that you've done in the other areas of science?
Yes, yeah. So I think it's I'm gonna go a little bit deeper in these conversations. I'm sure in USA you would have the same thing. Like we have a thermostat for the central
Mm-hmm.
heating,
Yeah.
right? So you set a
Right.
temperature and the boiler will kick in. So if it's cold
Mm-hmm.
outside and if you say 24 degree, the boiler will make sure your house becomes 24 degree, right? And then there is
Mhm.
a thermometer which measures the
Mhm.
temperature. So in our case, if I combine the law of attraction and conditioning and everything, our nervous system is a thermostat. And
Mhm.
then that creates our reality, and our five senses act as a thermometer which measures what is out there, which perceives the reality. Now, our conditioning shapes our nervous system. So the things which we become fearful about, the things which gives us confidence, that is installed in our nervous system, i.e. our subconscious mind. But not
Mhm.
only the mind, it's the entire body. Now, when I did affirmations, I was actually putting something through the thermometer, and it takes a lot
Mhm.
longer. For me, law of attraction has not worked. And I know why. Because by
Mhm.
visualizing something for 10 minutes or half an hour, I had another 20 with long years of, you know, the patterns and the data in my nervous system. It would take me the
Mhm.
whole life to change it. Now, the only time it will really work is you actually live your life like that. If you really want to do strong affirmations and things, it's not just so if I money is a really good example to explain. So we
Mhm.
visualize that I have 10 million pounds. So how does it feel like to have 10 million pounds in your bank? Because I never had
Mhm.
once, right? So how do I know how I must feel to have 10 million pounds in my bank account? So I would think, okay, how would I spend it? So I would think of a house, think of a car, think of a holiday,
Mhm.
right? But then I go to the shopping and look for discounts. I look for the sales. Now, if I had 10 million
Mhm.
pounds, would I really look for discounts or I look for
Mhm.
conveniency? So when you start bringing those small, small things into your actions, if I had 10 million pounds, I will go to any restaurants I want. I would go and buy any brand I want. I won't even look at the price and I'll just pay because I know I've got
Mhm.
enough. That is the abundance mindset. Now, if you're able to do that, and it doesn't require you to spend a lot of money, it is how you feel about it. So the emotions would then, your actions would become like you have 10 million pounds. And that is what really going to start the reality. So you're now, when you do things through actions, your nervous system starts learning new reality. And that is resetting your thermostat. And that will
Mhm.
change your reality, which you will then perceive through your five senses.
Wow, fascinating. So, if our listeners wanted to be able to make an impact within their mindset, what's one strategy that you could help them use your method to become a better obstacle buster?
I think the very first step, which is very easy, is to read the book because the
Mhm.
book is not a story. It's not my life experiences. It's the
Mhm.
conversations they will have with themselves. And the book isn't long. It would take about 4 hours to finish it in one go. But it will take
Mhm.
you to conversations within yourself, which you knew were always there, but we never paid attention to those questions because we were too busy chasing things externally. And at the end of the book, there's a 30-day exercise, and it's not a homework. You could do it
Mhm.
anywhere, at any time, in any state. All it's asking you to do is when you were happy today, what made you happy, and how did you learn to express happiness in that event? And same thing
Mhm.
with anger, same thing with disappointment. How did you learn that this event is actually that you have to feel disappointment, or this event has to get anger out of you? How? So if you do that for 30 days, over time you will
Mhm.
get to experience that your reactions were actually learned. So those reactions will start to disappear. That's the
Yeah,
beginning,
fascinating.
and it will automatically change. Like if somebody comes angry at me because they say that they might have thought I made a mistake, normally I would
Uh-huh.
become defensive, right, and kind of give the answer with the same tone and same anger. By
Mhm.
learning that I don't need to be angry, so when the person walks in again and now I'm calm and I'm like, oh really, let me take a look at it.
Mhm.
Now, that is not something that person was expecting, right? So it actually interrupts
Yeah.
his pattern because he came with expectations of how I'm going to say. Now, his system, his programming is frozen because he didn't get the same input he expected. So then
Mhm.
he becomes calmer. And over time, you'll see the way people used to react or act, react with you will
Mhm.
drastically change because you're shifting your energies, because there is a chart of the emotions and the frequency, right? So when
Mhm.
you're happy and calm, you're at higher vibrations because you're open to
Mhm.
receive. And when you are stressing, you're actually closed and you cannot receive. It's like if I make a fist, how can I
Mm-hmm.
receive something? Because it's tight.
Mm-hmm.
And if I let it go and be relaxed, is the time I can actually receive it. And by
Mm-hmm.
relaxing your entire body actually puts you to the receiving zone or receiving mode. And that's what we really need to do.
Wow, that's really fascinating. Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's some great insight for our listeners to be able to take an
Absolutely.
action
Absolutely.
to break
And
through.
yes, if they finish the book, did the 30-day exercise, and if they still feel there is more they want to experience, then the
Mm-hmm.
3-day event is going to take place. The first one is happening in September in London. And then, they can join our mailing list where there will be no junk mails, but only the important information will be shared to all the members who subscribed. So I will be doing this in USA, Canada, Australia, Dubai, India, and those dates will be announced through the email and on the website.
Well, very good. Well, I know our listeners are going to be wanting to reach out and connect. So, what's the best way for them to be able to do that? To get your book and maybe to get on that email list?
Sure. So if they go to my website called pratiqkjaani.com, I'll spell it. It's
Wow.
PRATIQKJAANI.com. And the 3-day method is called Dhrasti, DHRASTI method.com. On both the website, there is sufficient information, and I'll be putting more information on a regular basis. And they can reach out, they can join the list, and even anything. If they read something and if they have a question like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I can apply this to this particular scenario, I'll be happy to answer. Because the purpose of this book and the 3-day method is my calling for rest of my life, to reach out to people who has gone through the struggles I have been through. And I'll say this, it was really, really painful. And I don't want anybody who is searching for answers to struggle anymore, because the solution is here.
Wow. Well, thank you.
And I want to thank you to provide this platform to reach out to people. And even one person finds something better. And if their life
Mm-hmm.
experiences changes after reading this book or listening to this podcast, I think I've done my work. So thank you for allowing me to be on the show. I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
I'm grateful.
you are so welcome. Thank you so much for sharing all your strategies and tips and insights, really, to help our listeners, those leaders that are listening today, to be able to overcome those obstacles and build resilience. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this is your host, Warren Wandling, saying until next time, be an obstacle buster and be resilient.